jump from one position to the next position to the next position, just so that they can continue their seat on that particular board. That's necessary, I suppose, because of our charter. So my question is, A, do you support musical chairs? And B, if you were elected, what is your primary concern in terms of addressing an issue in our charter that will ensure that we have the kind of leadership that we need in this community?
I think she means term limits.
I used to love musical chairs when I was a kid. I was always very good at it. But as an adult, I don't want to play that game. I will sign a pledge today that I will not play musical chairs. I will not do more than 2 terms because I'm a business person. I want to go back to the private sector. I'm running for county commission because I think we need new, young, diverse leadership on our commission. We haven't had that. We've had 4 commissioners, to your point, that have served for 32 years. That's too long. That's not fair. And that's a problem. And we need to fix that problem. So to answer your question, I will definitely change the charter so we do fix the term limit loophole.
The simple fix is the charter would suggest changes. One of the changes that simply would fix it is that you can't go from one district consecutive 8 years to another district because that's the loophole, right? So I think the people want limitations. On one hand, you want to say let the people speak on a referendum, but on the other hand, you're not trusting them to elect your representatives. So you have to be careful about how you're thinking it through as well. But I do believe that term limits are needed and effective, and 2 terms on any district or any of the districts would be the easy fix. Just quickly on the public-private partnership piece, I'm in total favor of that. That's another solution for the financing of some of the roads. If you look at the project that occurred with the Dave & Buster's and the Bass Pro Shops, you know, the county was able to incentivize to get that development paid for by a private sector initially to get that done without taxing and putting that burden on the taxpayer. We need to look at more things like that. I can't wait to ride the train to Orlando and Miami, by the way, especially if it's paid for by the private sector.
Sky? Is it not working? Take it off your
I actually, I do support an ordinance that would put into place loopholes or close a loophole for the Board of County Commissions. The point of us having a democracy are term limits so that everyone in this room is able to run for a public position. Another thing is when we have people who are running for public office, new candidates, we need to support them as well. And then maybe we won't have the same people running over and over and over and over again. So we have to support our new candidates. We have to support our young candidates. We have to get money out of politics, and then Ken Hagan would not have sat on the bench for so long. So those are 2 things that I want to work towards.
Thank you, Scott. Kim?
Well, personally, I think 8 years is plenty since I'm turning 60 today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. But I do believe that there is an opportunity for someone to serve in their district, and then also it's very different to also serve countywide. Your perspective is different, and it's a pretty big job when you're working countywide. So I'm not opposed to having someone work in their own, run for their own district and then run countywide. But then to hop on countywide makes absolutely no sense. Managing a county as big as Hillsborough County is, with 1.4 million people now, with 30 to 60,000 people showing up every year, is a big job. It's not something you can practice at. You just have to learn how to do it. So 2 terms I think is okay. If we max out, it's got to be no longer than 8. And I think it's wise to do your single district and then an at-large at the most. Thank you.
All right. Mark?
So to clarify a comment that Mr. Marks made, yes, tax dollars were used for the Bass Pro Shop project. There were $6 million of county dollars that were absconded that could have certainly been used for something else. So that was a private partner pooey is what it was. Term limits. We have a charter. That's the constitution of our county. That is the document that guides us. And the public is the voice that tells us what to do there. So I would support a clarifying charter amendment to what term limits look like in our county without question. But it's not what the county commission would decide. It's the charter that would be the instrument that would decide that. Every 5 years, on the 0 and 5, the county commission convenes a charter review board. There are 2 appointees from each commissioner. And for a year, they walk through the charter and they decide, and there can be influence from the public, elected officials, etc. They can influence some ideas, but the public sits at the control mechanism to decide what happens with our charter. And that's how that would get fixed.
Thank you, Mark. Ray? Oh, no, Ray's next.
No, I absolutely agree. I think it undermines the intent of what we're trying to do. If somebody wants to run for a district-wide, they can do that, but it still probably should be 8 years, certainly no more than 12 years total. But I do think we need to address that. One of the reasons I wanted to run is I felt like there's a lot of board members that are just kind of coasting, and we've got these huge problems. I know Pat Kemp has battles on her hands often because she wants to go in a different direction, and you're just not getting the momentum to do that. So we've got to start thinking differently than we have about these problems. We're at a place where if we're right, we can go to the next level as a community, and we need to make the right decisions to do that. And I think you do need to get new people in. One of the only reasons I ran this time is because there wasn't an incumbent commissioner running for this particular race. Because it's hard to run against an incumbent commissioner and win.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it. I'm going to give the cute little Garfield dog to our esteemed panel. So hold on to him. Gene, you're next from La Gaceta newspaper.
Gene Suited. Thank you. So you mentioned about, a couple of you mentioned about the expanding population of the county. What are your thoughts on expanding the size of the commission from 7 to 9 or any kind of expansion? And if so, what would that expansion look like being? From right now you have 4 single members, 3 at large. How would you be able to give that kind of service? You talk about customer service to this many constituents. What would that expansion look like if you're for it, and if not, why not?
Good question, Tim. 7 to 9, and throw in the single-member district idea.
Okay, I'm against expanding the single-member districts. I don't think we should have a commission where no one represents the whole county. I think the system we have now works, the 4-3 system. I don't think that we should expand that. I think, and I know county commissioner probably wouldn't like this, but maybe we shouldn't make it impossible for a community to become a city if it wants to. My experience in the Tampa Bay region is when you look at Pinellas County, they do have government closer to them in some areas. Now, for broader areas, I think the county is the right place, but on things like zonings and things like that, I don't think that's necessarily something that should never happen. But I definitely do not agree with the idea of expanding the system or changing it where right now you always have the majority that you can vote for, your district-wide and your district commissioner. So I think it works, and we need to keep that.
Thank you, Ray. Mark?
And let's realize when we became a chartered county in the early 80s after the corruption that infiltrated the county center, if you're not familiar, they dragged 3 of the 5 commissioners out in handcuffs. That was the opportunity to reset when we became a charter county. So that was really important. So having served on the Board of County Commission with 4 single-member districts and 3 county-wides, everybody in this county, did I get that right? Yeah. Votes for a majority of the board. You vote for 4 of the 7 commissioners. I think that puts the power in the people's hands. The idea of moving to single-member districts reduced the power of the voting public by 75%. That was a horrible idea. So you go from 1 county commissioner that you would vote for to the 4 that you have. If we changed the board, I would like to keep the majority voting mechanism in place. So if we went to a 9-member board, maybe 5 single-member districts and 4 county-wide. But I think when the public votes for a majority of the board, it keeps the power in the hands of the public where it belongs.
Thank you, Mark. Kim?
The county commission is a big job, and a lot of our districts are rather large, but they are very unequal. And it really, when you break out the 4 single-member districts, I think it's critically important that we do consider possibly expanding it, but it does need to still include at-large seats. It's hard to get anything done now when we have 7 seats and you have 3 at-large where people are looking out for all of the county as a whole. To have 9 single-member districts would be a nightmare. Absolutely a nightmare, because no one has incentive to work together. Plus, we don't need another $500,000 on the budget when we foresee a potential decline in tax revenues with the homestead exemption. So that it was completely irresponsible to bring that up, in my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Sky?
I agree. I think the way that the county commission is set right now is great. As we get bigger, then maybe we want to consider adding 1 or 2 additional seats. However, we're fully aware that the majority of the countywide seats is what's helped. It's helped the residents to decide on how to care for the county as a whole. I know most people mentioned it'll be easier to run. When we jump into a countywide seat as a candidate, we're pretty much aware of what we're getting into. So I like it the way that it is, and I don't think that adding additional seats, especially 9, would benefit any of us.
Thank you, Scott. Todd?
So the best argument for the existing structure is what Ray mentioned, which is every voter has an opportunity to vote for the majority of the board. So at least you feel like if the direction of the board is going in the wrong direction, then you have a say in that. I grew up in a county where they only had 3 commissioners, 2 of whom voted to build a stadium. So that's too small. But I'm certainly not in favor of expanding the size of government through more representatives. I understand some of the arguments for it as well, and we need to have a diverse commission that is truly representative of the community. But if anything, I would consider reducing the size, to stay consistent here. But in terms of the way it's at now, I think that I would definitely be opposed to expanding the size of the commission. Even though Ray and I can agree on one thing, we both won a commissioner from the West Chase area for the first time.
Thank you, Todd. Aakash, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. I think Hart has 14 board members. It's a lot. It's too many to get things done. And so 7 members is fine. I'm okay with that. But we had a question at the Keystone Civic Association meeting the other day. Someone asked me if I thought if Keystone should annex and be their own city, and I'm okay with that. If you can show me how you're going to pay for your fire chief, your police chief, your community development, and show me a plan, I'm okay with that. So I think that's part of the ways that commissioner, as your commissioner, I'll look at other development communities and see who wants to be like that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Hold on to the mic. You'll be next up, and Reverend Michelle, you're next.
Thank you so much. Bishop Michelle B. Patty. It takes me a day or so before I open my water bill, because most time my water bill is much larger than my light bill. So I would like to know, I never hear anybody talk about reclaimed water. What are your thoughts, position, and how you feel about reclaimed water for the county?
All right, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Aakash, you're next.
Thank you for the question. I think that is a great question. The other day I met someone who, when I was knocking on doors in South Tampa, who reclaims 2,000 gallons and can drink her own water and be self-sufficient. I think that's the way that we're gonna survive down the line. There's so many parts of this community that need that. So I think we definitely need to.
The water issue in our region is one of the examples of different government actors working together and coming together to create a more successful result. We had a real water problem about 10 years ago, and there's been a focus on preserving our natural resources and preserving the aquifer and making certain that when we can reuse, we reuse. My home, we have water that can recycle, and so or reclaim water. But I think it's important to invest in infrastructure to allow to continue for the preservation and not just for clean water purposes, but just so that we can manage that with the growth as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Sky.
I actually want to do a little bit more research on that. I am a fan of reclaimed water, but understanding how it works and how it can benefit the county, I want to do some more research on that. I know there are some areas in the county that use reclaimed water, and then there are some suburban areas that do not. So I will definitely do some more research on that.
Kim?
I actually live in the city, so I have the option of both reclaimed and fresh water. What I discovered, however, is that as a citizen, as a resident, you have a discount. And so there's some incentive to use the reclaimed water when you're using it on your grass and other areas. But if you're a business, there is no incentive. It's the same price as potable water. Given that reclaimed water usage is the largest part of that is really our commercial lands where they're watering grass. I think it's important for us to recognize if we want to incent people to actually use sustainable practices, we have to have a pricing mechanism that works within it. If the county isn't necessarily offering that on a wide-scale basis, we're missing an opportunity for the county to innovate, which is classically the problem with many of our services to begin with. And as a Tiger Bay member, you know that I talk about transportation every time I come to these meetings. So that's one way we can do it, but reclaimed water is a perfect opportunity to actually save and sustainable resources that are so precious to us.
Thank you, Kim. Mark?
So I grew up in Brandon in the 60s and 70s, and I lived in the city of Tampa for 15 years, beginning in 1997 in Swan Estates, off of Lois, south of Kennedy. And there was a point in time they were putting in reclaimed water into our neighborhoods. Also at the same time, we're learning that we're creating so much reclaimed water that we're actually pouring, at the time the number was 55 million gallons of reclaimed water a day back into Tampa Bay. That shouldn't be the case. But where the county commissioners can make a difference here is that if we're going to approve growth, if we're going to approve development, there should be potable water used for drinking, and we should be using reclaimed water where we're doing our watering and other needs in the county. So the county commission plays a key role in making sure that development executes a way that helps us preserve the resources that we have. And we're all talking about all the new people coming to Hillsborough County. We're going to be fighting over water in the years to come if we're not making smarter choices today, folks.
Thank you, Mark. Ray?
Yes, and not to repeat everything Mark said, but I totally agree. Reclaimed water is good. We need to use it. The community I live in has reclaimed water. We should be making incentives for new development to use reclaimed water in our community any chance we get.
Thank you, Ray. We have a former county commissioner here. Has some knowledge of things.
So I'm not going to ask a transportation question or an economic development question or a raise question or a tax question. The unincorporated county is around 850,000 people. It's one of the largest cities in the state of Florida. I think people feel largely disenfranchised by it. You are the government. The unincorporated county budget shows it's going to ground down in about 2 years. Out of money. No money for fire, no money for roads, no money from parks. You guys are running for the office. I want to ask you, what's the budget for the sheriff, Parks and Rec, and fire for unincorporated county? And how are you going to meet the future needs of a place that's going to add 400,000 people in 20 years?
Okay, well, I'll answer your last first because I don't know exactly what the budgets are for those departments. I do know that the county has a $5 billion budget. Typically, the new transportation is $800 million toward that. Yes, we need to figure out how we're going to provide for the new people coming in, and it is going to cost more money, and we've got to have a formula that does that, or we're going to fall behind. One of the things I'm concerned about when I visited the other counties in the Tampa Bay region is they look a little better than Hillsborough does. They are doing better for whatever reasons, whether their impact fees are a little higher, or they're putting more money into their neighborhoods and things of that nature. But I do notice a difference, and that's one of the reasons that I'm running, is because I feel like Hillsborough should be the leader, not kind of the tail. So we really do need to figure out how to get money for those things, and there's many different ways we can think of that, even public-private partnerships, things, all kinds of things.
Thank you, Ray. Mark?
Great question, Ed, because it isn't the money's going to run out. We're just going to hit a plateau. We're not going to have any new dollars. So what should be on the table are impact fees, gas tax. We should be looking at sales tax. Anything that is revenue producing has got to be looked at as a viable option for cultivating new income so that we can invest in our future. So that's the answer to your question. Again, this property tax amendment, we can't fall for these Tallahassee gimmicks every time they want to throw us a couple bucks so it makes them look like they're fiscal conservatives while they're failing other communities in our state and being able to fund and afford the things that we have to grow smart.
Thank you, Mark. Kim?
Thank you for the question. You know, as a financial planner, one of the things we do is budgets, and the good news is What we've done historically is not done one in such a way that we actually charge the fees for the services that are necessary to expand our economy as we've done, whether that be in business, but more in terms of residential development and how we've used those dollars to sprawl all over the county. It must be more responsible in making decisions that make sense and are working within our financial plan. And we haven't done that. So mobility fees, impact fees, the various different fees that actually make sense for being able to afford the services that the county is responsible to provide to our citizens is critically important. By doing that, while it does cost money to do business, it actually allows us to not have areas where we fall apart. When you don't fix your roof, it will ultimately cause more damage than help. So it's important to invest in those things that we can afford.
I agree that we do pay much lower impact fees than our surrounding counties. So we have to have our developers paying their fair share of fees so that our residents are not negatively impacted. The other thing is, as the county grows, we may need to look into possibly increasing the taxes. And I don't think the word tax increase would be such a dirty word if we had more transparency where people were seeing where their money is going. And that's going to be key. As we get larger, if you've ever traveled to places in Texas, they pay 8.25% in taxes, but it goes to their schools, it goes to the community, to development, and we may need to consider that option as we get larger.
I agree that we need a hard look at where the money's being spent, and I was even suggesting that we audit the budget and make it more open and transparent so that everyone can simply see it. I believe that we need to create economic development opportunities to attract newer and better and higher paying jobs so that the tax base naturally, at what it's at now, can increase with some of the development that will occur as a result of that. But I am a big believer in user-based fees, and if you're going to use it and you need it, then perhaps we should assess you to build it or pay for it on an ongoing basis. And so we do need a hard look at the mobility fees and the impact fees. In the region, they're certainly low, and I think most developers will be honest about that, and I think that it needs a hard look because we do have a budget crisis, and there's other things that need that same hard look, and so we need to be honest brokers and assess it honestly. And so, but the public-private partnerships are great examples, and my time is up.
Aakash?
Thank you for the question, Ed. I think consensus is the answer. When you look at the impact fees, I think they were lowered right before the recession or just around the recession time. I don't think they've been raised since. And we need to have, as commissioners, we need to have consensus with our developers and say, this is why we need to raise them and this is what the possibility is. And as far as economic development, the QTI dollars that the county commission has, we have a $5 billion budget, and we set aside money to go recruit corporations and high industries. My brother's a mechanical engineer. He graduated from University of Michigan. He came back to Tampa, couldn't find a job. Why? Because we didn't have a great engineering opportunity for him. He lives in Cincinnati now. So we need to find great companies, and the county commissioners have the opportunity. They invest $575,000 a year in the Tampa EDC. We need to make sure that we're using your money wisely. If they're going to invest that, let's go recruit and find a win and an ROI, because that's how business people work. Thank you.
Well, it's getting late, and the clock on Mickey's nose is getting a little big, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But I want to give the audience an opportunity to congratulate everybody. We have a lot of very serious issues to deal with. I'm going to ask the Garfield Committee to go ahead and tally up who had the best questions. I had a lot of questions. This is probably the most questions I've had when people wanted to raise their hand and ask. So we're going to have 1 minute to wrap it up. Starting with Aakash, and while the Garfield Committee does their job, go ahead and you have 1 minute to wrap up and tell everybody, give your last pitch to the audience and TV.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for listening. I appreciate all of our candidates and all of our questionnaires. I've got great volunteers. I want to give them a round of applause. My volunteers are here today, and you guys really helped me grow throughout this election campaign. My website is patel2018.com. I have a flyer on your chair here. Transportation, education, economic development, and tourism are my 4 pillars. I have a track record, I have a business, and I have a plan for all my intention for what I want to do. So please come ask me questions, because if I want to be a public servant, I should go talk to the public, and that's all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Aakash. Todd?
I'd like to thank all the candidates as well, because in this day and age in politics, it's a little bit different than it was 10 years ago. It's a little more vitriolic, and there's a lot of crazy stuff happens. So it's a big deal, and I appreciate your opportunity, your willingness to serve and run, because it is a challenge. Countywide does present its own different challenges as well. But I'm a consistent conservative Republican, as you may have gathered. And we need disruptors on the county commission who are willing to take a fresh look and not the way things have always been done. And as a business owner, I understand the necessity to reduce regulations on business, keep the tax burden low, create an environment where businesses will come and provide newer and better and higher paying jobs. And I believe that we want to keep Hillsborough affordable and prioritize on the transportation needs that we have. And make that a focus without the first instinct being to raise taxes and to kill jobs, in my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, John, for doing such a good job today.
Thank you, John.
Again, my name is Sky U. White. As a nurse and a community organizer, if there's anything that I love doing is advocating for people. So during the week while I'm working, I'm fighting for people. On the weekend as an organizer, I'm fighting for people. So I want everyone in here to understand just the importance of what your community organizers do. We're the ones who are advocating for you. Always advocating for you. We're not doing it to put our names on buildings. We're not doing it to get newspapers written about us. We're doing it because all of the residents here in Hillsborough County deserve equality, whether it be education, whether it be transportation, job growth, or diversity. We're the ones who are going to continue to fight for you, and that's why I've decided to do it in a more powerful position as a county commissioner.
Thank you. Kimberly?
Hi, I'm Kimberly Overman, and I'm looking forward to serving our community. I wear a bracelet on my hand just because I said I would. And in 2016, I actually withdrew from the race because you know I've been coming all the way along. My goal is to create leadership in this position, to have some transparency so citizens know that we're working very hard to provide the services that are needed. I think it's critically important that we invest in our economic development as well as our education, as well as creating opportunities, but transit is the one way we can make the biggest difference, and all of you know that have heard my questions and answers before. I thank you very much for the time of you listening. My website is voteforkim.com. I'll have my 6-point policy plan fully developed in the next week or so that you'll have an opportunity to read where I am in all those positions and have more time to make the decision to vote for Kim. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mark?
Happy birthday, Kim. It does beat the alternative. My name is Mark Nash. What a great opportunity to speak with you all today. I'm really concerned about the future of this county. This is my 3rd time running for county commission. We have not put the right people in place to change the dynamic for our success in the future. I am grateful to be endorsed by our state attorney, Andrew Warren, Hillsborough County Commissioner Les Miller, and his wife Gwen Miller have endorsed my campaign. Just this week, our public defender, Julianne Holt, endorsed my campaign. If I didn't mention Alex Sink, I'll say it again. Betty Castor and Sam Bell have endorsed me, and working people in Hillsborough County have endorsed my campaign as well. AFSCME Local 167, AFSCME Florida Region 2 has endorsed my campaign. ATU 1464, our bus drivers here in Hillsborough have endorsed me. Our plumbers and pipe fitters, our International Union of Operating Engineers, and just this week the Teamsters endorsed my campaign. I want to serve this community. I want to work hard for you, and I look forward to being elected in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Ray? The reason I'm running is because it's something I've thought about my entire career. The timing was never right. When an incumbent commissioner wasn't going to run, I thought, I'm going to do this. Didn't tell my family. When I told them, my son, who I thought would say, are you nuts? He goes, Dad, you have to do this. You've talked about this your whole life. You have a lot of experience and a lot of things you can offer. So I looked at my '66 classic Chevy and I thought, should I sell this and use this